Welcome and good evening. We're here to have we're going to the 41st special session. I need to get a motion to go into special session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. First order of business is a public hearing on the fiscal year 2018-2019 tax rate. And we're going to do those separately, the tax rate and then the budget. So, Michelle?
Okay, yes, thank you. We're here this evening to discuss the fiscal year 19 City of Hagerstown proposed tax rate. And fiscal year 19 covers the period effective July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019. The property tax rate for the City of Hagerstown encompasses two distinct areas. First, real estate, and second, corporate personal property tax. Real estate, number one, all categories except apartments will change from 94.1 cents per $100 of assessed value to 97.2 cents per $100 of assessed value, or a 3-cent increase. Real estate for just the categories of apartments is proposed to change from 94.1 cent per $100 of assessed value to 99.2 cents per $100 of assessed value, or a 5-cent change. Corporate personal property tax is set to be automatically 2.5 times the real estate tax rate. So by default, the corporate personal property rate will also change from $2.35 per $100 of assessed value to $2.43 per $100 of assessed value, or 7.7 cents.
Okay. All right, we'll open the public hearing, and those who want to testify in favor of the tax rate, please step forward and give us your name and address. Seeing none, we'll move on to those who oppose the tax rate. Please step forward and give us your name and address. If you signed up on the list, Ken Berry, you're first.
Hi there, I'm Ken Berry, and our office is at 33 West Franklin Street. This is an exciting time to be a part of downtown Hagerstown. I have been actively investing and spend my time downtown. And this is our renaissance. We have the next 24 months to get over this hump. It has been coming our direction, and now is our opportunity. And I hate the idea of squelching our opportunity by raising fees and raising taxes in this moment when we can get over this hump. Ms. Michelle has mentioned to you all that city income is driven by assessments. It's not driven by tax rates per se, it's the assessments. Our assessments are there, they will come. If you just give us the opportunity to just get over this hump. The economy is coming our direction. The market is coming our direction. The revitalization that's happening around you is coming our direction. I would hope that you see what's going on. There is outside investment that it really wants to be here. And I just, if you could find a way to not squelch this opportunity by scaring off outside investment with just an arbitrary, if the headline's gonna be another tax increase, you can call it 3 cents, 5 cents. Just, this is our opportunity. And if you can delay this and the rental thing, I think you'll find that the money will be there. Just give us 24 months. Thank you.
Stephen Silas.
My name is Stephen Silas. I live at 932 Oak Hill Avenue, here in Hagerstown in the North End. I have two questions for Mayor and Council. The first one being, with the meeting that was held at the firehouse recently, some discussion was made as to the disproportionate share of revenue that we pay back to the county for services. What is it that has, well, we have, or whoever, we have offended that allows this to take place, and have we considered litigation in order to solve this? My second question, the discussion at the firehouse had mentioned by Mayor Bruschi and Councilmember Heffernan that the swimming pool may, that the golf course may be considered as privatized area. I would also like to add the swimming pool to that, and I'd like to know if that's been in consideration. Thank you.
I will address the question about the county, and only that. MML, Maryland Municipal League, and the other 156 municipalities in the state of Maryland have been talking about this for 20 years that I'm aware of, and that is tax differential, tax set-off, whatever you want to call it, between services offered by a municipality and services offered by a county entity. And the fact that, we pay into the county tax system, we don't take advantage of we don't get to use all of the county amenities or county services that are offered from county administration. And they did give us a set-off, okay, back in 2010 of 12.5 cents. So your county tax bill is actually 12.5 cents less than what the people outside the city limits pay for their county tax rate. So they did do that for us back in 2010. That is nowhere close to where we should actually be. And I know Mr. Alshire's mentioned it time and again, it should be more like 25 cents, but currently it's 12.5. We have a joint meeting with the county on June 5th in this chamber, and hopefully we'll have a discussion that revolves around fair and equitable tax set-off. And, I mean, it's not going to help this year's budget. It's not going to do a thing for this year's budget. And Ken, I appreciate and I know where you're coming from. It's still not going to do anything for this year's budget. And I will tell you, just like I said at the fire hall, listen, take that piece of pie, that pie chart, tell me what you want to cut, because there's nothing else to cut. Our staff has done that this year. I mean, we started out with a $2 million deficit, and we ended up with $773,000. So, I mean, they cut, and cut. So, if you want to tell me what amenities you don't want, or if you don't want streets cleaned, or if you don't want parks mowed, or if you don't want, traffic lights synchronized, or if you don't want any of those things, you got to let us know, and then we'll cut, and then there won't be a tax increase. But until then, this is the only option that we have left.
Understood, as we've said many times before, this is not true for every single homeowner. But for the majority of homeowners in this city, their combined city tax bill today is no more than it was 10 years ago. Tax rates are one thing, but when you take a look at the devaluation, as Ken has been talking about the property values, and when we had a number of years ago what people do not want to accept, which was the largest tax decrease in the history of the city, which amounted to approximately 11 cents when this county changed from a rebate to a set-off, and we were the only municipality in the county that did not raise its taxes to offset that problem. And we are still recovering from that.
All right, no one else is, good, Kristen, sorry.
And I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record on this, but I'll make comments because I want to address. Let me just address your second question first, because I think that's the simplest. I have no interest in privatizing the pool or the golf course. To folks out there, and I like to put our taxes in basic dollars so that the average person can understand what that means. So we lose on the golf course amenity somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000 a year, depending on the year. We need 28,000 rounds to make the golf course break even. That golf course on its best day has done about 17,000 rounds. It cannot support 28,000 rounds, and that amenity in this community will never be self-supporting because it just can't achieve that number that it needs, and it achieves even less if you bring it to a price point that needs to occur. To the average taxpayer, though, what that means, and taxpayer meaning each property in the city, it's about $12. That's about what it costs you to have that golf course there as a taxpayer or property owner each year. It's about $12, because each penny on the tax rate equals about that $250,000, and to the average person, it equals about $12 of each one of your pennies. The pool is about half of that, and frankly speaking, that pool is an amenity that a significant part of this community would otherwise have zero enjoyment of during those months for that type of recreational activity. And so there's just my 2 cents on those two particular items. The other part, the first part that I wanted to get to a little bit is your question about the tax rate. And to Mr. Barry's comment, to the average landlord, property owner, the difference in the taxes and why I'm opposed to the 3 and 5, and I'm in support of the 2 and 10 rate. And so there's no confusion of why I'm voting against it. I don't think there's enough of a disparity. But to the average property owner of a rental, that 5 cents is about $60. So that's $60, your basic 6-unit apartment building that we heard one of the speakers at a previous meeting this evening talk about. It's about $60 spread across those 6 units over a 12-month period. You can obviously do the math on that. It's about, I guess, less than $1 a month. And so I know folks will hear about 3 cents and 5 cents and all these types of numbers and percentages and rates, but they mean nothing unless you can talk about it in real dollars. So here's a real dollar number. We generate in property taxes about $28 to $29 million a year. That's what the city takes in of property tax money, and 2 of our departments, and it just, this is the way it works. You know, it's not a slight against these departments at all, but 2 of those departments, the fire takes about $9 million of that, and the police takes about $14 million. So about $23 million of the $28 million we bring in goes to fund those 2 basic public safety services. The other $5 million roughly that we get in what I'll call non-shared funds or non-self-supporting funds on the general fund side, that's what we have left to spend on all of those other things, administration, you simply have to have it. Parks and recreation departments, planning and those types of departments, that's what the other sort of small portion of that 28 million roughly is left to divide up amongst. And so the reality is we have contracts with those employee groups, police and fire and public works and light department, water and sewer, those self-supporting funds and the general funds, and there's obligations associated with those that we've agreed to, and whether the assessments are there to support it or not, we honor those obligations. And the lion's share of that obligatory tax goes to cover those general fund supported services. I often find it odd, and I use this example, just my own example, my home that I bought in 2005, 2006, taxes. So in 2008, 10 years ago, for that home, I paid roughly $3,100 in taxes. With the tax rate added, that additional $30 next year, I'm slated in total, city, county, and state taxes, I'll be paying about $2,600 in taxes. So over that 10-year period, I'm actually paying about $400 less in taxes than I was 10 years ago. The difference being, as Lou speaks to the differential, the difference associated with that is if we still had that differential rebate where the county gave us money and we gave that portion back, so to speak, within the budget to the city taxpayer, it'd be about $200 per household. That's about the number that the county would give us to sort of give back within the budget to the average household. And instead of the county basically giving each of our households through us the $200, they cut that out of your tax rate on the county side. And that's really the only difference. And in 2010, when that took effect, I paid about $2,800 in taxes, and again, next year I'll pay about $2,600. So even in that time, in the last 7 years, that's been in effect, that's what occurs. And I wanted to address briefly your question about the differential as it applies to our municipality in particular. And I use this example, the city of Hagerstown, and I've looked at all of the municipalities, so there's 8 smaller municipalities plus us in Washington County. And if you look at each of those, the average town in Washington County, from the smallest to the tallest, so to speak, from Funkstown to Smithsburg, they pay about 1% to 2% of their budget goes toward fire. And that's more of a donation-oriented approach. The Washington County, and its roughly $200 and some million budget, general fund side, it pays about 4% of its budget toward fire. And it does through, again, sort of a donation process. It does not have what you would consider a paid fire service. The city of Hagerstown is one of 4 municipalities out of the 157 in the state of Maryland that have a paid fire system. One of 4, Cumberland, us, Annapolis, and Salisbury. The other 3 all have a different set of circumstances as it applies to their relationship within their counties of what they get in return for providing that paid fire service. Annapolis, by example, has about a 50-cent tax differential. We have 12. Salisbury actually gets paid a certain amount of money annually by the county to have that paid system, recognizing, as the county does in that county in particular, that paid city fire system in Salisbury goes outside of the city limits. City of Hagerstown, we pay 17.5% of our budget goes toward fire. In fact, that's more than the county and all those other municipalities in this county combined. And that's just a reality. That's what we've chosen to do. That's a level of service. If we didn't do that, and tomorrow we handed that service off to the county, I've estimated that it would cost the county about $15 million. Of course, that would be spread over a larger number of population, and that would require a contribution from the average city resident of somewhere between $400 and $500 of your taxes to go towards fire. So basically, you'd be handing over what we have as a very good paid fire system to a county that hasn't committed, in my opinion, to wanting that type of level of system for about $200 or $300. It's not worth it to hand that over. But what it is worth it for us to do is we're the only municipality in the county that pays $400,000 a year toward the 911 center. That is a service this county provides to the entire county. Our volunteer companies get shorted about $500,000 a year. Right there is $900,000, or about 4 to 5 cents on the tax rate that we pick up immediately that no other town in this county has to do. And so those, to me, are a couple of those sort of starting points of the conversation, not even including the $9 million that we're paying for a paid fire system that, frankly, goes well outside of our municipal limits on a very regular basis to provide support service to the county volunteer system. And so I know that sounds a bit like a broken record, but when I look at the budget, it's not rocket science. Right there, to me, is part and parcel to the issue, completely disassociated from the assessment. As the mayor pointed out earlier, and Lil, when you look at the last 10 years of the tax implications of the city, we've cut the tax rate by roughly 12 cents. We've rebounded that 12 cents. And we had a net effect in decrease or decline in assessments of about 7.2 cents. And so, as Austin astutely put when he interviewed to be appointed to this position, we have a little ways to go because there is still a gap of about 4 to 7 cents in our tax rate just to get back to square one prior to that 2008 housing crash. That's my 2 cents on the issue.
And just to follow up on that, what we truly need is for our residents to show up at the county commissioners the more our residents understand the unfairness of the tax differential system in Washington County, the more they can be empowered to go to the county and seek answers why a municipality that supplies approximately 25% of the entire county income is shortchanged. Because about every dollar that the county spends on tax money, about 25 cents of that is generated from the city of Hagerstown. And keep in mind, the city of Hagerstown doesn't have some type of legal responsibility, a moral responsibility, yes, to send our firefighters outside of our city. The same is not true of the county. They have both a moral and a legal obligation to send their firefighters into the city of Hagerstown, because sometimes we need to remind them that those who live in the city are residents of the county and are county taxpayers. So they have an obligation to us as residents. We have the favor that we do and the obligation morally to supply that service outside of our jurisdiction. Unlike Pennsylvania and West Virginia, who have no legal obligations to send their equipment into us and vice versa. So please put some heat on your county commissioners, and there's an election this year. You know, there's not a city election, there's a county election. And you're hearing loud and clear how much the county affects your city budget. And you should be wondering where those folks stand when it comes to having debates. That's all.
Anybody else?
And just to reiterate some of the points we made at the fire hall the other night. Staff got the deficit down from 2 million down to about a $760,000 nut to crack. And there are easy ways to look in the budget book and pick out things to cut to get down, or to decrease our expenses. I mean, in the FY19 expense, the golf course is going to be costing us $295,000. The farmer's market, $62,000. Potterfield Pool, $133,000. Hager House, $31,000. We can cut all these things. We can cut the train museum for $55,500. We can cut municipal stadium contribution $23,900. We can cut the ice rink $62,500. But these are the kind of things that they're not going to exist on their own without some kind of a municipal support. They're things that make it nice to live in the city. And so, you know, you take it something like the golf course. You know, do you want to cut the golf course? It's a good way to save money. We can do it right now, but you'll never get it back. You know, do you use the golf course? I don't know. Some people do. If I had time, I would. But you know, these are the kind of things we can take a real short-sighted view and crack this budget tonight and get down to where we don't have to raise property taxes. The long-term view is let's try to make the county do what is right to this for the city to help fund us based on our what we're paying in county taxes. Chief Lohr has a laundry list, a really good spreadsheet of all the shortfalls the fire department is facing based on non-funding, things that are funded out in the county and the volunteer fire companies that aren't funded in the city fire companies. And if we just had that funding, as Kristen pointed out, that's going to be a big chunk of our budget shortfall here. At the end of the day, all these things are great for planning purposes. We're kind of under the gun right now to balance a budget. And right now, the only thing that we have is property tax. So, I mean, if all the citizens come in and say, I don't want a train museum anymore, I don't want the Hager's House open, I don't want a golf course, I don't want a pool. Yeah, you know, if that's what we want, then we don't have much of a city after that.
Anybody else? Name and address, Nancy.
Nancy Allen, Oak Hill Avenue. I know that all of these people here have huge investments into our city, and we are the ones who have chosen to make the investment into the city. We've purchased properties, we've maintained our properties, and for me, I can say a raise in taxes is just not acceptable at this point. That's why we have you, Mayor and Council, to do the hard work, to look at the budget, to see what we need to do to get it to a zero and not raise property taxes. I can tell you that a raise in property taxes will have an opposite effect of raising your assessed values, because it will further disincentivize folks from purchasing properties within the city limits. I know you don't believe that. I know you think it doesn't make a difference, but I can tell you that it does. And when people are deciding if they want to live in the county or they want to live in the city, they don't care if it's 3 cents more than last year. What they look at is the bottom line. Am I paying $4,000 for taxes in the city, or am I paying $2,000 in the county? And the difference is that great. And I can tell you they will choose to go outside of the city limits to save $2,000 to $3,000 in their yearly tax bill. So I would say, when I look at the pie chart here that you provided in the budget, and I see that public safety is 54%, which I think, I don't even know if that's enough, to be quite honest, because when I look at what is the charge of mayor and council, I think #1 priority ought to be public safety. That, to me, is the most important thing that I feel that you would do, is to make sure that our citizens are safe, our homes are safe, our firefighters are there if we need to have them, call for service. Today, I passed 3 emergency vehicles going someplace, and I am glad that we have that service available to us. I feel like that is the most important thing that we have. I know that is very important to people looking to buy homes, or those types of amenities. But I would say if you raise taxes, you're going to have the opposite effect on trying to increase your assessed value, because that's what we need to do. We need to become that destination so that supply and demand, doesn't matter whether you're talking about homes or books or cars or widgets, it's the same thing. If you try to increase the demand, then the prices will go up. And if you have an increase of tax, you're going to have the opposite effect on trying to incentivize people from coming, living, investing, whether it be a homeowner, whether it be a private investor who's buying an apartment building or doing renovations and making a beautiful ballet studio like Mr. Barry has done here. He alone increased the tax base on that building just by his renovation to that space. And public safety is absolutely paramount in trying to raise our property taxes. And I think when you're looking at all of this, you need to go back to the drawing board. And if you find that there are things that aren't producing, if I'm looking at as a business budget and I've got something that is a constant drain, then I have to wonder whether or not the value is there. If it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense. And maybe it does make sense to privatize something like a golf course or, some other amenity that we have. But I don't think public safety is even an option to consider. And I really take offense when I hear that, what do you want to cut? You want to cut the park, or you want to cut the police or the fire? That's not an option. That's absolutely not an option. So I would say, and maybe that sounds really
Unrealistic. Unrealistic.
maybe that's a good word, but I would say, as a citizen here who has invested in this city, and to come to me and say I need more money because we don't have enough to do what we need to do, I would say I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. That's all we have. We have given you all that we have, and we expect you to do with what you
It's
can.
not a selling point to potential people to say that the taxes in the city are less now than they were 10 years ago?
They don't care. They honestly don't care, Lou.
Okay.
What they're looking at is
All right.
this house in Fountainhead versus this house on the terrace.
Right, and the same is going to be true
Yeah.
whether we raise the taxes this year or not, isn't it? If we don't raise the taxes at all this year, you have the same exact problem, the tax rate in the county.
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
Are they
But I'm
looking at
saying-
the differential
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
the water and sewer
They don't
rates
care
in
about that either.
Fountainhead
They,
versus in the
they
city?
honestly don't care about
don't
that
care.
either.
It's
What they're
dollar and
looking at,
cents.
what they're looking at is what is the tax bill, because that's factored into their mortgage. And when they're making their escrows of taxes and insurance and, you know, the principal, that's factored into there. And when they look and they see, you know, I can bring I could show you properties, and you would be surprised at what the taxes are on a townhouse out in Collegiate Acres. $3,300 on a townhouse, plus a front foot benefit charge, plus an HOA fee, and, you know, on and on
Why is
and
there an
on.
HOA fee?
I'm sorry?
Why is there an HOA fee?
I don't know, there is.
Oh, for like
It's
cutting grass and doing things
yeah,
like that?
those types
Okay.
of things out there in
Right.
that community. But what I'm saying is, it does make a difference. And when you're trying to create and become that destination for people coming up from Montgomery County who have the higher incomes, who are going to go and frequent our theater and go and have dinner and those kinds of expendable income, that's what we're trying to attract here. So don't raise the taxes and
So
make
we
that a
shouldn't give the
disincentive.
Maryland Theater $200,000 this year?
I didn't say that, did I? I'm saying.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out
I
what you
understand
think is
that.
important, what you think isn't important.
I think what is important is that you go back to the drawing board and figure out how to do it without raising 3 cents. If it means we have to go back to staff and try to, you know, consolidate some departments, we've discussed maybe consolidating our permits and inspections department with the county. If it means you have to go over to the county commissioners and say, we need our money back because, you know, we can't afford to pay the 911 of $400,000, whatever it takes, I'm asking you as mayor and council to do the hard work for us, the citizens who have made the investment in the city. So.
You know, another deterrent to someone buying a house on the terrace is if they go past that triangle there, Prospect and the Terrace, and it's all overgrown, and there's weeds and long grass, and they
Right.
run over 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12 potholes on the way to the house they want to look at. That's all a deterrent too.
I understand. And you know what else is a deterrent? When you've got high crime statistics and you've got people with all kinds of problems that are creating more of calls to service by our fire and our police. And I know that that has been a concern with our city because our costs are going up. And so we have to look at the big picture here. How do we solve this problem? But I don't think, coming back to the investors here, and we are all investors in our city, is a way to solve the equation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
I just want to address one point, and that's the assessment issue. And first, I want to say, you know, when you say "we," I want to make sure that folks understand out there, just like Lou's point about city residents or county residents, the folks at this table are property owners and homeowners in this city. So when you say we've invested, yeah, I've lived my whole life here. I bought 2 houses here. I plan to live here forever. So when you say we, I want to make sure you're not saying it in a tone that suggests that I'm somehow outside of the we that you're referring to. But one of the things associated with assessment is about 10, 12 years ago, the state came in and said, hey, city and counties, what you should really do is you should lower your assessment cap from 10% to 5%. You know, that would go a long way, and that was in 2003-4 era when the housing was booming, and, you know, property values were going up 13% a month, and so we did, along with most other towns and counties across the state. And the state, of course, the state never did. It never lowered its own cap from 10 to 5, but we did. And then the housing bubble hit, and over the 10-year period, and you have to understand, when we're talking about rates, and I'm going to get to this second point in a moment, is during that period where we lowered it from 10 to 5, in an effort to protect exactly that type of thing occurring where the rate and the assessment drove it up at 10% and continued to drive that tax cost significantly higher, that didn't happen. We actually lost. In fact, over the 10-year period, we lost 13.5 cents worth of our assessment value, okay? Now, the cap only works one way, meaning 5% higher. So that means every year that we have a great year, the cap is capped against your property tax assessment and that value increasing more than 5%. But there is no cap going down. So every year that the municipality, the governmental entity loses money, there's no cap on that loss, which has allowed, and I use my example, of going from $33,139 10 years ago to $2,550 today. If there were a cap placed on the decline in those instances, we would have only lost 7.2 cents. In other words, if the cap were to work in both directions, and that's why I always say that this whole assessment process where the state comes in and tells a jurisdiction what the value of the properties are in that jurisdiction, which are usually about 60% of what you can sell them for, it's arbitrary. It doesn't work in controlling sort of what you need on average to spend. I mean, the average cost to the average home with this 3-cent tax increase is about $36 over the course of the next year. Whatever you want, the $3 a month, I think it is. And that's still $400, $500 less than it was 10 years ago. And that's in part because the cap doesn't work both directions, but you expect that the application of the taxes that you take in to work in both directions regardless of that assessment going down. Mathematically, that's simply impossible. It's just impossible. It can't work that way. And case in point is Washington County, I think is having its hearing tonight, right?
Yes.
Doesn't have to do a single thing tonight to its tax rates because the assessment on the values of the property across this county are generating $650,000 in new money for the county without lifting a finger to change the rate. But nobody's there. Nobody's going to that meeting saying, hey, for the next year, because of the assessment change, even though you're not changing my rate, I'm going to pay you another $24 over the course of the next year. They're here saying to the city, because you've changed the rate as it applies to your assessment, you're going to be paying another $36. And I find that odd, just as odd as I find the argument that no one looks at the utility differential. One thing I get to do as a town manager in Frederick County is I get to compare water and sewer utility rates. And it's funny because there was an argument recently in the town I work for where, we're the third or fourth highest in the region. And I went to that person and I pulled up the rate of water and sewer 10 years ago, 2008, just happened to pull it up, and I said, hey, 10 years ago we were the third or fourth highest. 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, Washington County was the highest water and sewer utility rate in the region, more than double the rate you pay in the city of Hagerstown. And if you were to take that equation, it's about $270 versus $150 is about the number. It's probably $300 to $150. That's about a $400 to $600 difference that you pay just in water and sewer in the city, just that one utility on an annual basis. That's $400 to $600 against that tax rate, because you're paying the municipal tax, you get to write down that you don't get to write for utilities. On the electric side, it makes up about $25 to $50 a month. On the electric side, I don't get that benefit because I annexed my home into the city and I'm under PE rates. I don't get that 5.2 cents per kilowatt. I got to pay the 6.7 or 6.8 of the prevailing rate of PE. If you had to buy trash service outside of this city, and one of the things I argued as a county commissioner, there were 26 different commercial trash haulers in Washington County. And you would have thought I was stealing folks' firstborn by putting forth the proposition that Smithsburg and Cavetown could go together and get a trash contract that would be more cost-effective for that entity as a whole. And that was soundly argued down. Only municipalities should have a contracted trash service. So try and go out in one of the neighborhoods like Fountainhead, where my father-in-law lives, or like Foxley Meadows, and see how many different haulers every week pick up from a couple of houses here and a couple of houses there, And that cost alone on an annual basis is about double on a quarterly rate, which is another $150 to $200. Just those three utilities alone equal about $1,200. Just those three on the average house. You know what the average city taxes are for a single-family home in Hagerstown? About $1,200. The average townhouse, about $700 to $900. The average apartment unit is about $300 to $600. Those are the figures. You feel free to look at them. I'm not making them up. And so right there on your municipal tax that you pay against the cost effectiveness of the utility rates that you get to write down those taxes. Those folks out there don't get to write down those utilities charges. So, you know, I'm sure we could argue that semantic all day, but those are the numbers. And you know, you're right. I'd like to come to you and say that it's zero, but it's not zero. You know, unless you want to seriously get into those things that we as a city have obligated ourselves to, which are largely the employee wages and benefits categories. They just are.
Anybody else?
I will only note to your point about the county and also Nancy, I did reach out to the county commissioners. I sent all 5 of them an email and the county administrator about having this meeting to talk about the tax differential. Rob Slocum did respond and Wayne Kiefer did respond and follow up. But I haven't heard anything from the other 4.
If you read the paper.
I know we're having a joint meeting.
No.
But I'm
Why
just
you cut me
stating,
off like
I
that?
just think that's important to note, that I did not get a response from the other 4.
Just like the town ball.
If you, yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you read the article in the paper on Sunday, Terry Baker does not know that there's a tax set-off with the city of Hagerstown. So,
They will in June.
yeah.
I did try.
Yes, sir. You wanted to speak? Come on, quickly, Don.
Don Graves, resident of Hagerstown, and a lot of points that Kirsten's saying is the truth. My taxes were a lot higher, and then with the offset, and they've come down. And of course, like he said, again, you know, where do you come up with that revenue? How do you do that? So, but I have a question. You mentioned 3 to 5, Kristen, and 2 to 10. Are you talking about, is that a
The 2-cent general property tax and a 10-cent rental.
but how long is that? Is that just for FY19, or you plan on keeping this out for a 3 or 5 year vision? I mean, what are you looking at, or is this just concerning FY19?
This
That was
is
my
just
question.
this year, right now.
Okay, that was
the
my
one we're
question.
talking about right now.
So, okay, all right, that was it.
Yes.
This won't take long. Before I say what came to say, I always have to push back when Councilmember Metzner brings up that the taxes are the same as 10 years ago. And I mean, just push back lightly that, you know, 10 years ago, we were in the midst of a huge bubble. And our properties were overvalued. We didn't know that at the time. And it was an international scamps and crooks and people who devastated small-town America. So it's slightly, I don't want to say it's dissembling. I won't use a strong word like that, but I always want to add that to the mix there. Okay, so that's one thing. We've referenced several times tonight the meeting that North End of Hagerstown had at the firehouse, Antietam Firehouse. It was a very good meeting. We had about 60 people, 65, plus about 10 officials. And the officials in the city are very friendly. I appreciate that fact that you get together with us and answer the call. And I realize also that it's in your interest to do this because otherwise you're going to miss our valuable input. All right. So I took some lessons there. I've learned some things that night, and I learned something here at the rental discussions. I'm glad I came. And so I took Mayor Brucci's point that at least one time in the past several years, I remember Don Munson was with us, and I miss Don, that, you know, you went over the city expenses and cut, was it about $750,000? Did I get that right?
For this budget, for this year?
No, I mean, back then. I mean, you were trying to
we
cut
cut,
costs,
yep,
and
yep.
so, you know, I appreciate, I'm gonna give you that. You did that. And so you reminded us of that, and that's fair dinkum. What I want to bring to the floor, and this is going to support Councilwoman Metzner, is that I do believe that if we could have taken that meeting that we had that night with Chief Brito and Mayor Brucci and Delegate Quarterman and others, that if we could take that meeting and the opinions expressed and deliver that as a package to the county commissioners, that would be very powerful, very powerful. And I hope we do that since it is an election year. And so, and I'm just about finished, I'm trying to think how to do this. Like, I know Nancy will turn out our point of view, Nancy and Marcia, and I don't know what the politics of you expressing yourself, you don't seem to be worried about that. So, I mean, if you could summarize your, you know, your views, that we could deliver
Putting
this,
it
that would be,
politely, yeah.
that would be good. We could take it to them and do that, you know, and let them understand that there's some long-term problems here. And they're not easy problems to solve. I take your points, you know, I listen to what you say. And so that's what I wanted to say is I hope we do that before this election happens. We go down there and show them that, I mean, I think Nancy, I'm going to say something like maybe a little bit extreme, but I mean, you're looking at 500 votes right there. I asked her to inform me of things I don't know, and I try to get information from you so I know how to vote on something. I want to vote as an informed person. And so the county commissioners are going to have to take a look. Hagerstown has a very central role in this county, and it can affect county elections.
Thank you for
Thank you.
listening. Thank you for listening.
Okay.
Just to second your point, I've had informal discussions with a couple of county commissioners, and some of these issues with the fire department, the disparity in funding, whether they know it or not, they don't know it. So that's something that I think we're going to try to do as a council with our meeting with the county commissioners, but I think especially as Lou mentioned, this is an election year, and I think it's a good time to get the attention that we need. And I know that's going to affect my vote, and I hope it affects everyone else's vote too.
By the way, how many county commissioners live in the city of Hagerstown?
Are there any that live in Pennsylvania or West Virginia?
All right. Anybody else? Last call. Oh, jeez. Mr. Delegate, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Mr. Mayor. So, good to see everyone here.
Good to see you.
I appreciate you giving me a couple minutes. Just a couple things as I was sitting here listening. I just wanted to add my 2 cents. You know, I was obviously opposed to a tax rate increase last year. I was opposed to the two-tier tax, proposal when it was discussed last year and everything. But, you know, a couple things that were discussed here this evening and talked about that I just want to hit on here. You know, I appreciate, Kristen's analysis and Lou's comments about the tax rate doesn't affect, the tax bill per se, but it does. I mean, you don't need to look any farther than in the budget book of the revenue that was generated in 2016, $28,882,000, and projected this year is $30,642,000. It's a difference of $1.7 million. Clearly, that revenue is coming on the back of the taxpayers. So it does increase, may not for everybody, but it does increase. And the reason, to follow up on Kristen's comment, if you don't see people lined up at the county commissioner meeting, it's because their values are increasing. Okay, so our tax rate's increasing, but our values are depreciating. So our equity is gone. I'm all in support of the things that were discussed here as far as trying to get the city's share in our fire and rescue. Be more than happy to do whatever I can to lend that support to that when you guys talk to the county. But I think we also need to look in-house also. And I know we talk about the different amenities and things like that, but I mean, there's certain things, I just quickly went through, when you look at that pie chart, like you said, where do you want to cut, where do you want to look at, excuse me. And you look at the government chunk, I think it's like 14% or something like that, $6 million. And you look through the different departments, IT, HR, finance, communications, planning, code, engineering, parks, all, pretty much everybody, city, staff, so to speak. No one wants to see anybody lose a job by any means. Nobody wants anyone to be furloughed or anything like that. But when you look to see where we've gone just from 2016 to where we're going in 2 years, and you sit back and look at those numbers, and there's no real clear explanation of how we got there, I have to question that. You know, operational expenses increased $300,000 from 2016 to the proposed budget this year. Just each department just lists as operational expenses. What makes up that expense, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe some of you are more privy to that, I'm not sure. Salary, wages, and benefits increased almost $800,000 between those departments from 2016 to proposed 2018-19. Put those two together, it's $1 million. So I think we need to look a little bit internally. Obviously, we need to have those discussions outside as well, but I think we need to also focus on our internal efforts. So, you know, we had the budget hearing, or excuse me, not the budget hearing, the hearing prior to this with the rental registration. And we find ourselves on one hand that we want to encourage growth, we want to encourage development, we want to encourage investment. But on the other hand, we want to overregulate, continue to tax. Not only tax, now we've come up with a new methodology to tax even the investor even more. It's really tough for those two to exist together. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dilly. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close this, we'll leave the record open for 10 days, right? And we'll close this public hearing, and we'll move on to the next. And the next is the budget for fiscal year 2018-19.
Good evening.
And no one has signed up to speak.
I think everybody already has.
We're here to discuss the city's current proposed fiscal year 19 budget, and again, that fiscal year 19 period covers from July 1, 2018 through June 30 of 2019, and across all funds throughout the city. The total amount of budget is $141 million compared to $131 million in fiscal year 18 budget, for a 7.7% increase. Important to note that only a handful of our funds and areas are actually not increasing, and that's in golf, the golf fund, parking fund, property management, and in our internal service funds. And internal service funds are simply health insurance fund, dental fund, and workers' compensation fund. So again, the proposed budget for fiscal year 19 is $141 million across all funds.
Okay. No one did sign up, but I always ask, anybody want to speak in favor of the proposed budget? Anybody want to speak opposed to the proposed budget? Council, anything from you guys?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, we'll leave the record open for 10 days for any written comment. Close that public hearing. Moving on, introduction of an ordinance, tax rates beginning July 1, 2018.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the introduction of an ordinance May 15, 2018, to establish the city's tax rates for the fiscal year July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019, on the basis of .972 per $100 of assessed value of all real property except properties designated as apartments, which will be .992 per $100 of assessed value, and $2.430 per $100 of assessed value of all business personal property within the city of Hagerstown. These rates reflect an increase of 31 cents per $100 for real property, except apartments increase of 51 cents and 77 cents per 100 for business personal property over the current year.
Second.
That's 3.1 cents and 5.1 and 7.7 cents.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, we got a first and we got a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Introduction of an ordinance, fiscal year 2018, budget fiscal year 2018-19.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the introduction of an ordinance, May 15th, 2018, to adopt the city's budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, in the total amount of $141,181,310.
Second.
And we'll give that to Emily. Discussion?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Introduction of an ordinance amending and supplementing existing City of Hagerstown general obligation borrowing authority in order to reprogram Series 215B bonds proceeds.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move to introduce an ordinance amending and supplementing ordinance number 0-15-01, passed on February 10, 2015, approved on February 10, 2015, and effective on March 13, 2015, which together with a companion resolution served as authority for the issuance and sales of the $8,020,000 City of Hagerstown Public Facilities Bonds, Series 2015A, tax exempt, the 2015A bonds, and the $1,850,000 City of Hagerstown Public Facilities Bonds, Series 2015B, taxable, the 2015B bonds, as amended and supplemented by ordinance number 01625, passed on 12/20/2016, approved on 12/20/2016, and effective on 1/20/2017, in order to, one, reallocate to a new project identified as General Fund Urban Improvement Project Plaza, the aggregate amount of $655,268.65, consisting of A, certain unspent proceeds of the 2015B bonds previously allocated first to a project identified as General Fund MELP, and then to project identified as Wastewater Fund Sludge Storage Phase 1 improvements. B, allocable premium realized upon sale. And C, allocable investment earnings relating to the project identified as General Fund MELP from October 31, 2016 through March 31st, 2018. 2, to allocate to such a new project identified as General Fund Urban Improvement Project Plaza any investment earnings earned after March 31st, 2018 on such reallocated amount. And 3, expand the definition of the word cost used in the prior ordinances. Before applying any such amounts to the new project identified as General Fund Urban Improvement Project Plaza, the mayor and council will need to pass a companion resolution providing for such programming. It has been determined that funds are needed for the project identified as General Fund Urban Improvement Project Plaza sooner than the projects identified as General Fund MELP and Wastewater Fund Sludge Storage Phase 1 improvements, and due to the taxable nature of the 2015B bonds and such new project, it is appropriate to reprogram a portion of the proceeds thereof for such purpose. The subject ordinance does not provide for reprogramming of any 2015A bonds proceeds. Staff is hereby directed to work with the city's bond council to develop the necessary companion resolution and any other documents necessary for the reprogramming of 2015B bonds proceeds.
Second.
Shelley? Okay. You think I was close? Discussion?
Family.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Introduction of an ordinance for the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan, Amendment 12 to the plan.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to introduce an ordinance for the following changes to the Police and Fire Retirement Plan effective July 1, 2018. Number 1, change the mortality table. Number 2, reduce the early retirement age from 55 with 20 years of service to age 50 with 20 years of service. Number 3, over a 3-year period, change the formula for calculating an employee's average compensation by moving from a 3-year average to a 5-year average. Number 4, increase the percentage of an employee's payroll contribution from 7% to 8%. And number 5, for all employees hired after June 30, 2018, decrease the multiplier for calculating an employee's normal retirement benefit from 2% to 1.8%.
Second.
Discussion?
Mayor, go ahead, Kristen.
So, I'm gonna venture that the biggest gain that the employee side, will achieve through, these changes is the reduction in retirement age from 55 to 20, from age 55, with 20 years of service, to age 50 with 20 years of service. And it looks like the other points, though, are points that need to be instituted for the solvency of the plan.
And I guess the basic question is, while I certainly believe that the employee groups like the benefits that come along with item number 2, having that mobility, to continue in that career somewhere else earlier. Item number 5, how big of a deal is that among those employee groups?
I mean, they accepted it, they accepted all of this, and even with number 2, the age 50 with 20 years of service is at quite a reduced percentage.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, so yes, I mean, it was a matter of looking at the health of the fund overall, and the employees agreeing to these things.
So a good bit of the conversation centered around everybody trying to mutually find a way to help fund this plan, with a guarantee that as the employer and as the city of Hagerstown, the goal to fund this plan and get higher levels of percentage wasn't in that city of Hagerstown looking to decrease our 14% employer contribution. Item number 5 actually was proposed by the employee group at that committee level and impacts only new
By the
hires
current employee
effective
group.
July 1, correct. The
Yeah, I mean-
difference, Al Winters was here earlier, but when he ran the scenario for individuals who would stay, and I'm trying to remember, but like over a 5-year period, until they were vested, that this multiplier difference in the overall scheme didn't really impact their take-home dollars significantly.
Or the desire for retaining. Yeah,
Even changing item number 3 from going from
I
a
don't-
3-year period to a 5-year period to average, the employees who are here and who are staying those 20 years, they're already gonna be at the higher.
I just continue to get the feeling, and even with these changes, I don't have great faith that affordability of the plan long-term is easily attainable.
I mean,
and-
I would agree. I mean, we know there's an issue with it, but
And we
these
hear
are,
every couple
these are
of
some very
years-
good first steps
They
to
are,
move.
but we hear every couple of years from, I don't know what you would call,
Actuary.
yeah.
They keep thinking we're gonna
That-
have a better return.
The,
than
yeah,
that.
it's a young plan, just give it time, it's a young plan, just give it time, and, the plan has, maintained a fairly unaffordable sort of, threshold, for us to meet, and so, I hope this does, manage to maintain those percentage levels we expect, but
It is a start on the employee side, and it was, I mean, I give credit to the team that worked on these.
So I think the issue, you look at the 2 to 1.8, and I say, what's that in the grand scheme of things to really go from 2 to 1.8? In other words, if you're trying to balance retaining employees and,
In your
manage the
long-term- in the
plan, is that
long-term.
0.2% really even worth?
That's a
And-
start.
It is, it's a start, and in the long term, when
Yeah.
you're thinking 20 years from now, 30
Yeah,
years from
right.
now,
It's like
that's,
being 1
yes.
degree off or when you get on.
right.
Yeah, we're more than a
1,000
degree
miles,
off.
It makes a big
And
difference.
I think what the members are starting to see is that we hire all these, and I don't want to say younger in age, but we hire all these people younger in tenure and seniority, and they don't stay. So they come, they invest in the plan, they earn interest, and then we're immediately paying back everything that they contributed, plus a 5% interest rate,
Right.
which the plan hasn't realized. So we're
Right.
paying out to people who don't stay and who aren't vested in our fire and our police services
Yeah.
to make the commitment and stay here and in our community. We're giving them more than what they've put into the plan, and it's hurting the people who are still here and actually
That makes
here.
better sense.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, my only comment is kind of related to this, but we have a number of firefighters here, and I have to tell you, when you're laying on the floor, it's a very nice thing to see a firefighter stand above you, help you up, and thank you guys very much, appreciate it.
Anybody else? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 89 donation bans to allow a leaning of unpaid license fees.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move for mayor and council to approve an ordinance to amend the code of City of Hagerstown, Chapter 89, donation bins to allow the leaning of unpaid license fees.
Second.
Discussion?
It is unfortunate we even have to do this. It's unfortunate that we have to accept them. That's my opinion.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 185 nuisance abatement to enhance support to our neighborhoods.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the mayor and city council to approve an ordinance to amend the code of the city of Hagerstown, Chapter 185 nuisance abatement. Specifically, the amendments will revise the definition of nuisance as follows. Number 1, add public right-of-way as additional area to be free of weeds, trash, debris, garbage, weed cutting, and other similar material. Number 2, add uncontrolled vines and overgrown shrubs and trees as conditioned to be abated on premises or within public rights-of-way. Number 3, add leaves as a material to be abated in public rights-of-way. These amendments are consistent with the city's vision and commitment for housing and neighborhoods in the community's city center plan.
Second.
You seconded.
Austin?
Not me.
Yeah, discussion?
Can we just, can somebody reassure me what the boundary of that public right-of-way is? Does it stop at the curb?
You don't need those.
Really?
It would be that entire portion that's not the private property, so it's the street, the curb, the sidewalk,
Which means you can't put leaves out in the street anymore.
I understand you can't put them out there,
and into the sidewalk.
but the expectation isn't that somebody goes out into the street to manage the debris in the street.
No.
Okay. That's why I'm asking sort of where does that responsibility stop?
It's because at times folks' trees and shrubs grow over into the
Yeah.
right of way.
Yeah, I'm
If
fine.
I rake up all my leaves and I push them out into the street and I don't pick them up, am I in violation?
No, you can't put them out there.
People do it all over the
It's not
place. What are you
responsible to
talking
go out
about?
there and get them.
People do it all the time.
That's what I'm trying to figure out is,
Am I in violation if I do that?
Yeah, because the city doesn't have a vacuum to pick up leaves in the street.
Okay. I just need to check because,
I'm just
I
thinking.
mean, I don't do it, but I'm just wondering.
I'm
Other
thinking
people
of-
do it. I'm just saying, I see it all the time.
I'm thinking of homeowners like Mr. Ravis and I that live on busy thoroughfares and not clean, quiet streets. The expectation is we're not going out there and cleaning up the gravel that washes down that SHA doesn't bother to manage. Okay. Right.
What'd you call the street?
I said it's
Quaint
clean,
and
quiet. Come out the Route 11 one time, you'll see the.
Anybody else have any comments? All in favor? Opposed? I'll voice my opposition. Renewal of investment policy statements for other post-employee benefits, OPEB, and police and fire employees retirement plan.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to approve the PNC investment policy statements for the OPEB and police and fire employees' retirement plans. These policies are renewed annually.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Does anybody have any comments? City Administrator?
Nothing additional, Mr. Mayor.
Charlotte?
No, sir.
Luke?
No, thank you.
Kristen? Emily? No. Me neither. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much. See you next week.